When my wife and I bought a home about 15 minutes north of downtown Durango, we weren't sure what the drive would be like. Of course, we had driven that road, but weren't sure if it would become a little bit too long of a drive or if we'd just really enjoy how pretty of a drive that was or is. And we really came to realize it is just an absolutely scenic, absolutely breathtaking drive. And we really don't mind that 15-minute drive. However, there are other parts of town, other parts of Durango, Pagosa, Bayfield, that can be a pretty tricky drive, especially in the winter, and just become kind of a long drive even in the summer. So we're gonna dive into all those details and much more. We're gonna talk about the winter, areas that you might wanna avoid if you don't want a little bit trickier drive, and areas that, kind of like our example, you might be completely fine with and okay with that 15 to 20-minute drive because it is so pretty and amazing of a drive. And we're jumping into it right now. All right, so I figured the best way to start this video is by really giving you kind of a big overview of Durango. So as you look at Durango on a map, you're gonna have two highways. You're gonna have Highway 550 going north and south, Highway 160 going east and west. So that's going out to Pagosa Springs, and going west is going towards Cortez, Mancos, Hesperus, Dolores, that direction. Now, as you're going north, you're going up towards Purgatory Ski Resort and the Animas Valley. So it goes Durango, the Animas Valley, then Pagosa Springs area, also known as the resort area that we'll refer to it as. Then south of town, you're going south towards Farmington and Aztec, New Mexico, and also an area that we consider the Mesa. This is kind of your flatter, more Santa Fe type style, type feel area. Then as you're going west of town, I mentioned earlier you're going towards Pagosa, but you're also going towards Bayfield, Colorado. Now let's start to zoom in a little bit more, and I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about what's off of these roads. Now I did this in the last video, I believe is the last video that I released, where I told you one of the cons of living in Durango, or one of the things you need to look out for, are living on those busier roads, and just that there are a lot of communities, neighborhoods right off of these busier highways. And so that's the first thing I'm gonna just elaborate a little bit on. There are some bigger neighborhoods, some really nice neighborhoods like Twin Buttes, Three Springs, like Durango West, that are off of Highway 160. So going west, you've got Twin Buttes and Durango West and some others. Then going east, you have neighborhoods like Three Springs, although Three Springs is backed up quite a bit, so you're not gonna hear that traffic. Then going north, you've got neighborhoods like Dalton Ranch, you have The Ranch, you have just a lot of neighborhoods right off of Highway 550, as well as off of County Road 203, and also just a lot of homes right off of County Road 203 and even Highway 550. So you just want to bear that in mind as we talk about commutes and roads in general. I feel like that's important to discuss. Now, as you continue going up towards the resort area, you have homes that are even over $2 million that are right off of the highway. Now, they're not staring right at the highway, but they are pretty close because you've got mountains going right up the ridge, the Hermosa Cliffs, on the west side of the street, west side of the highway as you're going up towards Purgatory Ski Resort. So just want to kind of elaborate on that area in that resort area. Now, as we come back down and we look at these roads, the kind of con on my list of Durango and the driving in Durango is there's not many alternative routes. You really have, if you're trying to get to, let's say Dalton Ranch, the area right in the middle of the Animas Valley, really coveted neighborhood, golf course community, really pretty homes looking out at Missionary Ridge and the Crimson Cliffs on the other side of you. You don't really have many alternate routes. Now, you can take Highway 550 or County Road 250 and then come in on Trimble. So there are a couple different routes, but for the most part, there aren't many alternate routes, especially as you go over off of Highway 160. You're really just off Highway 160. Regarding some of those neighborhoods like Twin Buttes and Durango West that I mentioned earlier. Shorter distances and very scenic drives. So let's talk about just living in town Durango. And I'm actually working on releasing a video all about in-town Durango. We're doing a lot of work on it because it's covering about, I want to say about 15 different neighborhoods where I go through each neighborhood and tell you all about those. So make sure to subscribe if you want to check that one out. But let's talk a little bit more about in-town Durango. One illustration I'm gonna give you based on that video that we were working on is that throughout that video, I would actually give biking distances instead of driving distances because living in town was so close to downtown Durango. So a lot of times we'd be talking 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes biking distance distance or biking from whatever home or area we were talking about to downtown Durango. So the only difference would be, or the only con would be, you've got areas like neighborhoods around Fort Lewis College that are up behind me here that of course you've got to climb maybe 50 to 100 feet to get up to that home. And then you've got a downhill drive to get down to downtown Durango. But if we're just talking driving distances, you're looking at 5 to 10 minutes to get across in-town Durango, really all the way across city limits. Now, if you don't count Three Springs, which is kind of a little outlier, that's pretty much gonna hold true. Even in more busier traffic, even in when you've got school traffic releasing, you're still gonna be maybe 15 minutes max from one side of in-town Durango to the other side. Now, where the con comes in is people are really spread out. If you've got some friends living in Durango Ridge Ranch, which is about 10 minutes west of town, and then you live up in the Animas Valley, which is about 15 minutes north of town, you've got the drive to in-town, then the drive up to Durango Ridge Ranch, which is close to or could be about a 30-minute drive. Then if you add in the winter, you've got a 30 or 40-minute drive. But then if you add in that home is in the back of the neighborhood, that neighborhood could take about 10 minutes to drive all the way to the back of the neighborhood. So you want to weigh out, like, yes, it looks like on a map that neighborhoods could be fairly close together, but you've got a whole mountain range in between a lot of different homes. You look at areas like Edgemont, very coveted, very great neighborhood, only 11 minutes to town. But then if your friends are up in the Animas Valley again, or in Durango Ridge Ranch, where we gave the example, you're going to town, then you're going up the Animas Valley, where as the crow flies, it's only 5 minutes away. All right, now the next thing on the list is compared to a major city, compared to just about any city, Durango's rush hour isn't a rush hour. I like to give the example that when you're stopped in traffic, when you're stuck in traffic, it's because some deer are crossing the street, or it's because some elk are on the side of the road and everybody's slowing down to look, or you've got a bike race going through town. So there's some really cool reasons why traffic might be a little bit slower, but typically it's not because of the cars. The one thing I would say is, yeah, 8 a.m. it's a little bit slower, but on my drive into town, and again, I live about 15 minutes north of town, on my drive into town, maybe it's about 2 minutes slower to my office than if I'm coming in at say 7 a.m. and getting in before any of the traffic. Then you've got that 3 o'clock, 3:30 rush for school. But honestly, again, I'm thinking maybe 2-3 minutes difference. Then the other thing that a lot of clients ask me is, what is it like in the middle of the summer because of all the tourism? Now, yes, we get 1 million plus tourists a year here, but it's not that much more congested. Now, maybe locals will debate me on that, but I'd say as far as traffic specifically, it's not much more congested. Yes, there's more people on the trails. Yes, there's a lot of people in the river, and honestly, it just adds to the fun. I think people are very respectful here. You don't see a lot of trailheads where you just can't even find a parking spot. There's so many different trails, and you can reach a lot of trails by just biking from your home in town Durango or wherever you live, that it's not like a lot of trailheads are really congested. Just to touch on that point about tourism real quick. All right, the next thing I want to discuss just a little bit more is the animal life here. Now, I've had several days where I was driving and had to swerve out of the way of deer, potentially into oncoming traffic, and have seen crashes just near my house where cars collided into each other because they were avoiding deer or because they hit a deer head on, and it did a lot of damage to the car. So first of all, I do recommend having an SUV or even a bigger car just to keep in mind that that does happen. Then also just being very aware, having your lights on, and also knowing that when people flash you, yes, it could be because there's a police officer up ahead, but 90% chance if somebody flashes you with their lights, it's because there's deer or elk on the side of the road and they are cautioning you that they could cross the road. You just really want to be careful of that. Now, if you're from somewhere like Texas, maybe you have that same thing happen there, but it is very, very prevalent here. What I was told is we have somewhere around 15 to 17 deer hit every single day in our county. So it is very prevalent. You really want to be cautious. Other thing I want to go into is the areas of Durango that doesn't have very good cell phone signal. So there's an area called Wildcat Canyon. This is also known as County Road 141. We'll show you on the map right now. That is a road going west of town, going about 5 minutes west of town, and it kind of V's off, and it goes into County Road 141, or if you keep going straight, you stay on Highway 160 going towards Mancos. Now this road, you've got kind of ridges on both sides of you. It's a great area to live. It goes out towards Shenandoah and some other amazing neighborhoods. Great area to live, but it is very limited service. The other area that I really want to caution you of, or just make you aware of, is the area going towards Lemon and Vallecito Reservoir. Lemon and Vallecito, or I should say Vallecito Reservoir up above the lake, does have great cell phone reception. reception, but below the lake, from that area all the way close to the Edgemont subdivisions, which are about 11 minutes from downtown Durango, that area is a very spotty cell phone service area. So I do recommend considering getting WeBoost or getting Starlink. It's about 50 bucks a month. It is 50 bucks a month. And you could have that Starlink Mini in case you have any emergencies. There are also some areas as you go north of Purgatory Ski Resort that get really poor cell phone or don't get cell phone reception as well. And that area is a little bit riskier area because you have the risk of avalanche slides or avalanches, and it's just a little bit sketchier road in the winter as well. All right, now let's talk about parking a little bit. Parking downtown Durango is pretty easy overall. Now, if you're trying to go somewhere like Durangler's Fly Shop, I'm typically parking within a 3-minute, 2-minute walk of the spot, and half the time I'm parking almost right in front of the store. So that's just a random example. If you're looking for something on 2nd Street, it's pretty easy to park on 2nd Street. Main Avenue can be a little bit trickier in the middle of the winter, but if you're trying to find a parking spot, even in the shoulder seasons or in winter, pretty easy. And there's free parking as you get a little bit further away from downtown Durango. If you're willing to walk 5 minutes and you're parking there all day, fairly easy to find free parking or cheaper parking as you go away from downtown Durango. And now I did briefly talk about winter weather, but let's talk about winter weather a little bit more. And I'm gonna try to give you some specific neighborhoods to start where they have steeper roads in these neighborhoods. The one that's been coming up a lot with clients lately in consultations and meetings with clients is the neighborhood of Durango Hills. Now, first of all, I think it's an amazing neighborhood. We have friends that live there. They absolutely love this neighborhood. They have phenomenal access to some great trails. Let's actually back up and tell you the location. They're about 12 minutes east of downtown Durango as you're going on Florida Road, and then you turn left and start going up the ridge, up the hill. Now, a lot of these lots are a little bit steeper lots. They're not very flat lots. Some are fairly flat though, and it just keeps kind of winding up and up and up for 10 to 20 minutes really to get up to the top of that neighborhood. Now, what's really cool about that neighborhood is up at the top. I won't go into too much detail because we have other videos on this neighborhood, but up at the top, there's some great access to trails, national forest. You have some amazing views of the Animas Valley from the top of this trail there. So this neighborhood is really cool, and I do recommend checking it out. I actually just sold a home in this neighborhood, but I just want to caution you that the road is a little bit more rutted out than most neighborhoods, a little bit less maintained than a lot of neighborhoods, and it just gets beat up a lot, right? It gets a lot of snow on it as it's higher elevation as it climbs up into the neighborhood, and that lower portion is just going to be a lot easier than higher up. So the main reason I really caution you just to be aware of the road is it is a little bit more rutted out, a little bit tougher to drive than a lot of other roads and neighborhoods. Now, a lot of clients are also asking me, hey, if it doesn't have an HOA, is it maintained? Yes, the vast majority of roads are plowed in the winter, but keep in mind, just because they're plowed doesn't mean it's still very easy to drive on. And also keep in mind that just because it's plowed doesn't mean it doesn't get a lot of snow before or after it's plowed that same day. So some county roads, for example, still might be tough to drive on. You're kind of driving in these tracks that are made in the snow by the other cars if there's very few cars or very few homes on that road. And you want to just consider the elevation that it's at, consider how long of a dirt road it really is, and consider how many cars are on that road every day. So there's a few things to consider. The best thing I can recommend as well is just reach out to me, and I'm happy to show you specifics on, or tell you specifics on a property you might be looking at, such as just giving you an idea. Yeah, you're not going to be too concerned about this. This is lower elevation. This has an HOA and it's plowed really well, and just really give you a good understanding. There are some neighborhoods, for example, there was one up near Vallecito Reservoir that was just plowed by one of the neighbors. And so if something happened, if he moved or whatever, you gotta kind of figure that out. There are some of those situations, but I rarely see that. I've seen that maybe 5 or 6 times throughout Durango, throughout all the sales we've done. Now, the other obvious things, but I really want to emphasize them, are just in general, it can be a lot more dangerous driving with snow, especially if you're not used to it. That's even in town Durango. You'll see cars sliding, even in the Animas Valley where the elevation is just 200 feet higher than in town Durango, still can be very icy out, and you just want to be cognizant of that. I really recommend having snow tires. I recommend looking at videos, just learning how to drive in the snow and on the ice. And I also recommend just having a little bit of extra food, water, a sleeping bag, just having some emergency supplies in your car, a first aid kit as well. I know it feels like it might be overboard, but in the mountains, even if you drive 10, 15 minutes away, you could be fairly remote where nobody sees you for a while. So I just always want to caution people of that. In a lot of my videos, you'll hear me say that. You will see vehicles throughout the winter that have slid off the side of the road. And maybe if it's a really bad storm, you can't get emergency help really quickly. Just something to really consider. I'd recommend just looking up a list of some emergency supplies you can have in your car and get those in there, and just be really cautious in the winter. Something else I recommend to clients that are looking at homes a little bit further out, a little bit higher elevation, is hey, just be willing to, and it's not like we get a ton of snow like Alaska or Montana or something like this, but in some of these higher elevation areas, I just advise just be willing and kind of prepared to maybe sit it out for one day. I don't think it's ever going to be much more than that, but if you get a lot of snow one night where it's 12 to 18 inches and you're in a little bit more remote area, you might want to just wait till the sun comes out, wait till the snow starts melting a little bit and the snowplow goes over it, and then you get out and go to town. Do what you need to do. All right, let's talk a little bit more about school drop-off. So a lot of these schools are actually in residential areas, so it can be a little bit of a backup with cars. I'm going to read something that somebody wrote. Required attention. Let's see. On the first day of school at Miller Middle School, the lines of cars stretched so far it required attention of 4 officers with a line down to Main Avenue, which is pretty far from Miller Middle School, if you're familiar with where that's at, and we'll point that out on the map right now as well. But the point of that is, yes, there can be a little bit of backups. It can be a little bit trickier dropping kids off. However, I don't think it slows down traffic a whole lot in comparison to what you might be used to in bigger cities. If you're just trying to get somewhere and you're not actually doing school drop-off, it might slow you down by 3 or 4 minutes, kind of like I mentioned earlier in the video. Then I want to mention living off of Florida Road. My parents lived off Florida Road. They felt like in the winter, because that road was, for one, just higher elevation, closer to... All right, I hope you can hear me well enough. The train is right behind me, and real quick, I'm gonna kind of interrupt myself to talk about the train. So the train will delay you a little bit every now and then, but it's not much. Like right now is just crossing the road, and that's a 30 seconds to a minute wait for the train to go by. If you have kids, they'll absolutely love it. Our kids love the train. Let's jump back into what I was just talking about. Figured I'd interrupt myself for that because the train was just going by. Not sure if you can see it over my shoulder though. So let's talk about Florida Road. My parents lived off of Florida Road in the Edgemont subdivisions, and their feeling was they didn't really want to drive out if there was a snowstorm that day or that night until a little bit later in the afternoon, till the snowplows went over it, the sun hit the road. Now, I'll be honest, I've driven that road a lot and I never had any real car issues, but I do understand where they're coming from, as it can be more icy on that road because it's more forested. So keep that in mind. That road is a little bit more forested. If you're asking me pros and cons of that area versus say the Animas Valley or even west of town, that would be it. The other road going back to County Road 141, also known as Wildcat Canyon, that road is kind of similar in that it's a canyon. There's ridges on both sides, and it can be a little bit darker in the winter in there. So both those roads might be the ones to kind of watch out for, or just be cognizant of if you're having to drive to work every day. That's just something to keep in mind. You might need to leave a little bit earlier, but I don't think it should be a deal breaker for you buying a home out here. I'm actually going to revisit winter weather a little bit, give you a few more specifics. So regarding road clearing, just like I mentioned, they're very good with clearing the roads with snow plowing, but that doesn't mean bone dry pavement. You know, you're going to have hard packed snow or patchy ice. The city doesn't use salt to avoid vehicle corrosion. Instead, they spread a sand gravel mix or some chemical de-icer. It means the roads still can be slick, and that sand gives you some traction, but you must drive carefully. So I just want to give you a few more specifics on that. Regarding vehicles, tires, studded tires are legal and worth their weight in gold. This was just kind of a review I was reading. I also really recommend, again, just having winter gear, tires, maybe chains. I've personally never used chains, but I do think it's worth having them in the garage at least. And something else I really want to emphasize, don't feel like you need to get anywhere fast, especially in the winter, of course. Get there, just get there safe. And again, there is ice, and don't get too confident once you get really good at driving here. You will see a lot of people driving super fast, and don't think that that means that the roads are perfectly fine. I've got some friends that drive way faster than I do, and it's all good. You know, we're just going to get there when we get there. And honestly, it's like 2 minutes extra in the winter to get to my work from a normal, even after it snowed, versus the summer. All right, now I want to give you guys some specific neighborhoods. I already gave you a few. I was talking about the Edgemont area where County Road 240 is, also known as Florida Road. And then I talked about County Road 141. Now let's talk about a few others. You've got Junction Street by Hillcrest or Sky Ridge, and then the Edgemont areas, which I mentioned. The first few areas are areas kind of above town that are up by the college. It kind of looks over town. So you've got a little bit steeper drive to get up to those homes. And some of those homes have some nice long uphill driveways, so be very careful and cognizant of that. But again, it doesn't mean don't buy these homes. Just be aware that you might want to pay someone to plow that, or you're going to need to take extra time to plow that and possibly buy an ATV so you can plow it yourself. However, living in town Durango, the flatter section, which is about 90% of Durango, is going to be much more manageable. The other thing I want to go into detail on is the Durango weather guy. I recommend looking him up. He's got some really good reports, and every storm we have, he'll put out a report of what he expects each neighborhood to get as far as snowfall. So it's really helpful, and it'll also give you an understanding, hey, this area, for example, Durango Ridge Ranch, only about 10-15 minutes away from downtown Durango, gets way more snow than in town Durango, even though it's so close. So that'll give you a real clear understanding of that. There's some homes in Plata County, for example. There's a home out there that's 17.5 million. Absolutely stunning, breathtaking home. We actually did a video tour on this home, and that home is going to get quite a bit more snow. However, it's a fairly flat road and flat driveway. So I really recommend looking at homes like that first, if that's your budget, because that makes up for the elevation and the amount of snow they're going to get. Just makes it a lot more drivable and safer. All right, now we're just going to go neighborhood by neighborhood, kind of give you some pros and cons of each one regarding traffic and more so just the roads in general. And so let's talk about Durango in town neighborhoods. So we just kind of mentioned this. So really a quick recap. The majority of neighborhoods in town are going to be just about the lowest elevation for the entire county, other than going further south, but it's not much lower going further south of town. Then the roads are going to be fairly flat. There are some neighborhoods west of town that go up higher in elevation, that climb, that there's a road that climbs up to those neighborhoods. There's not very many, there's only a couple. Then going up towards the college, the homes around the college. So if you're looking on a map, if you're looking on Realtor.com, you're going to see those homes closer to the college. Hillcrest is one of them. There's several others around there. I'll also remind you, we're working on a video right now, should be out within the next couple weeks, where it's going to be all about the in-town area. So if that's an area that you really like, keep a lookout for that video. Really cons, homes are pricier in this area, but it really depends. Pricier than some areas, especially south of town, but they can be lower than some other areas like the resort area or the Animas Valley. So we won't get into too much details in that now. Then downtown Durango parking can be a little bit trickier, but overall, I find that it's not too hard to find parking most of the time. Then we've got the Three Springs area. This is a kind of an up and coming neighborhood. There's a lot of new homes in this neighborhood. This is going to be one of the best neighborhoods for not having to worry about the roads, getting a little bit less snow than almost anywhere in town or in Durango. Then they also have very flat roads. There's not much hills to these roads or to this neighborhood or even to getting to the neighborhood. Now let's hit on Bayfield. Of course, getting to Bayfield, if you're taking County Road 240, can be a little bit sketchier road, can be higher elevation, no cell signal in some parts of this road. But then if you take Highway 160 to get to Bayfield, much easier road to drive. Both of these roads are going to have a lot of deer on them. You're going to have to be very cautious on these roads. And again, once you get here and move here, you're going to feel like I'm exaggerating this a little bit, but I definitely see deer almost daily, if not at least weekly, on the side of the road, deer or elk. The pro to Bayfield first is quite a bit less expensive homes there than in Durango. The con is a lot of people want to be closer to Durango. So if you're driving to Durango consistently, you do have that expense in gas. Going over to Hermosa, north of town, fairly flat. For the most part, most of these homes are going to have a really nice flatter driveways. There are some, however, that have steeper roads, especially as you look up on Missionary Ridge, where those homes go right up the ridge. Then let's just go north of that area of Hermosa and the Animas Valley. So the Animas Valley is about 0 to about 15 to 20 minutes north of downtown Durango. Then continuing up there, it definitely starts climbing in elevation quite a bit. So you're going to get a lot more snow. And now we're going up towards Purgatory Ski Resort. As we get up this way, all these homes in this area are paved driveways, but there definitely can be some homes and driveways that are steeper and more of an incline as you're building lots on kind of the side of this mountain here. Now it's still fairly flat lots, but it very much varies in that area. You have a lot higher prices. You're really starting around 1.5 million, going up to 10+ million in that area. Then again, as we get into the Edgemont area, I covered this a minute ago, County Road 240, also known as Florida Road. It does climb in elevation. Like I mentioned, as you get past Edgemont, you get worse cell phone reception or no cell phone reception. And that road is fairly forested, so it can be a little bit more shaded, get a little bit more ice. As you get over into Pagosa Springs, this area is a little bit higher elevation, about 7,300 feet elevation in Pagosa Springs. And they do get quite a bit more snow, but it just varies based on where the home is located. So many different neighborhoods a lot of neighborhoods in this area are fairly flat. flat and easy to get to in the winter. And there are some neighborhoods with very steep driveways, steep roads as well. So it just really varies based on the home. Again, reach out to me, guys, if you've been thinking about moving out to this area. I absolutely love talking about the nuance of these different neighborhoods, different areas. Would love to just hop on a call with you and discuss this, help really dial you into the right areas, especially if you're looking for something real specific. We're going to help you find that. Again, my name is John Burden. I'm a licensed realtor here in Durango and Southwest Colorado. Looking forward to helping you guys out. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.